Welcome to this forum, Africa and the Caribbean, Building a Common Future, presented by the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission. Tonight, our moderator is Ms. Makeda Fleming Challenger. Makeda is currently pursuing a PhD in history at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, focusing on reparations. She's passionate about writing Antigua's history and is currently researching the enslaving history of the royals whose wealth extracted from the labor and misery of enslaved persons here in Antigua on the royals' estate helped establish Harvard University in the USA. Makeda has been an educator for over 15 years. She's married to Pastor Lorenz Challenger and is very active in the life of the church.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's discussions. The Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission has declared September as Africa Caribbean Month, a declaration that builds on 2021 decision of African and CARICOM leaders to celebrate September 7th as Africa CARICOM Day. Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission acknowledged that day last week through a flag-raising ceremony and an address from Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Today, we continue the celebrations. We bring to you the thoughts of four important persons who will explore the theme, Africa and the Caribbean, building a common future from various perspectives. Our first speaker is Professor Stephen Golden. He is a professor of Garveyism. Brother Golden chaired the Garvey Studies Department at the Heidel University in St. Catherine, Jamaica, and lectures on the philosophy of Marcus Garvey at the primary, secondary, and tertiary level. He has executively produced media content on both radio and television since the early 2000s and is also the founding director of Jamaica's only authentic African cuisine restaurant, Cafe Africa. He serves as a member of the Jamaican National Council on Reparations as well as the Institute of Jamaica Council and has served as chairman of the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica, ACIJ, and the Jamaica Memory Bank. Tonight, Brother Golden provides a historical background on the developing relationships between the Caribbean and Africa.
Good evening and greetings to the other panelists and to the viewers and to our African family, our Caribbean family in Antigua and Barbuda. On September 7th, for the third time this year, we celebrated Africa CARICOM Day. This is an important establishment to recognize the deep ancestral connections between the majority of the people in the Caribbean and the people on the continent of Africa. My name is Stephen Golding. I am the president of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League in Jamaica. I also serve as a member of the National Council on Reparations for Jamaica. Africa CARICOM Day, indeed Africa Caribbean Month, is important not only because of the deep connections between our peoples, but because it is an inevitable coming together, a remembering of a family that represents the oldest branch of the human family. The founder of the UNIA, the first national hero of Jamaica, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey, was a visionary and a pioneer in recognizing the need for Africa to connect with her people in the diaspora. From as early as 100 years ago, he founded the largest organization of Black people ever established, but he did not do so alone. In fact, a number of the UNIA leaders hailed from the islands of Antigua and Barbuda. Amongst them, we must mention the likes of Joseph Sebastian, a strong UNIA leader in the Caribbean who went on to become a labor leader and politician in St. Kitts. We must mention the Reverend Dr. George Alexander McGuire, first chaplain general of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the founder of the African Orthodox Church, a strong Garveyite who carried the message of solidarity, of redemption, of repatriation and reparation for African people globally. There is also the Reverend Richard Hilton Tobit, born in Antigua, who later resided in Bermuda and became the first leader of the UNIA there. He was later knighted by the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey and went on to represent the UNIA as its ambassador to Great Britain. All of these leaders recognize the need for African people to begin to organize themselves globally, both politically, economically, as well as socially. That challenge still remains for us today. And so the establishment of an Africa CARICOM Day, indeed, closer political connections between the Caribbean community and the African Union, is something that is still necessary for us to achieve today. It did not start with Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. The African people of the Caribbean for many centuries have constantly kept that connection to Africa. We see that in the likes of people like Edward Wilmot Blyden, who was born in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands, but who repatriated to Africa, who became a well-known scholar out of Sierra Leone and Liberia, and later the Secretary of State for the Republic of Liberia. There is also the Jamaican John Brown Russwurm, one of the first Black Americans to graduate from a university in the United States of America, who started the first Black-owned newspaper, Freedom's Journal, in the United States of America, but who then repatriated to Africa and later himself became a governor in the Republic of Liberia. Marcus Garvey himself had extensive interactions with the government of Liberia. In fact, the first potentate and supreme commissioner of the UNIA was none other than Gabriel Johnson, one-time mayor of Monrovia. But what is important to note is that the Garvey movement's contribution to reconnecting Africans in the diaspora with Africans on the continent was not limited to just song and dance and sentiment. In 1921, Garvey offered to give a loan of $5 million to the government of Liberia when they were seeking same amount from the US government. It was the plan of the UNIA to establish a beachhead in Liberia as a gateway to the highway of repatriation for Africans to begin to return to the continent, not only physically, but to engage economically and politically, creating in Africa an empire strong enough to protect its sons and daughters wherever they may find themselves in the world. The Jamaican Amos Shackelford, who repatriated to Nigeria and became known as the Bread King, becoming one of the wealthiest Nigerians of his time, and also a founder of the Nigerian independence movement in the early 1930s. I say this, brothers and sisters, for us to recall and remember that the connection between Africa and the people of the Caribbean has never been severed. And all attempts have been made over the decades and the centuries since we were ripped from Africa, taken in bondage, trafficked across the Atlantic, and subjected to the most inhumane and brutal social experiment ever conducted by mankind in the form of the transatlantic chattel slavery system. But we must rise from these ashes. We must begin to reconnect with our families, to remember a family that was viciously dismembered and scattered across the globe. And so the actions of CARICOM 3 years ago in creating the first Africa Union CARICOM Forum, out of which the Africa CARICOM Day was established, was something a long time in the making. And so we follow in the footsteps of Marcus Garvey, of Joseph Sebastian, of George Alexander Maguire, of Richard Tobit, in our mission to make whole what was once torn apart. The global economic systems of today prove that it is inevitable that for our own survival as a people and as nations, this reconnection is essential to our prosperity. We are talking about creating direct flights between Africa and the diaspora, but we are also talking about a stronger political and economic integration. The African Export and Import Bank has arrived in the region headquartered in Barbados. There is also the Pan-African Parliament, which is seated in Johannesburg in the Republic of South Africa, who we now urge the CARICOM political leaders to push for full membership within the African Union, and for our legislators to take their seats in the Pan-African Parliament, as every African nation on the continent is allotted 5 seats for their legislators to bring their cases before that political union. I believe this can be done. I believe it must be done. And so as we go forward, not only in celebrating our common ancestry, our common culture, let us make a reinvigorating push to bring our people together, not only culturally and socially, but economically and politically as well. A former Prime Minister of Jamaica pointed out just recently on this year's celebration of Africa CARICOM Day that together we would represent a major voting bloc within the United Nations. And I believe this is the vision that Marcus Garvey had when he created an organization with divisions and chapters in every black community across the diaspora. When in 1920, he created the first plebiscite and convention, an international convention of the Negro peoples of the world, so that we could legislate and demand for ourselves those rights due to every human. And amongst those declarations, Garvey declared the inherent right of Africans the world over to possess themselves of Africa. I encourage our political leaders to take up this mantle and to continue to march forward in that direction, bringing together the people of the continent with the people of the diaspora, so that we can become stronger nations, more determined, and to take our place in the global landscape as the leaders that our ancestors who founded the civilizations of Ethiopia, of Egypt, Kemet, and of Timbuktu were rightfully so. I thank you.
We thank Professor Golding for that excellent perspective. I now introduce the Honorable Everly Paul Chet Green, who hails from the village of Liberta in the Caribbean island of Antigua and Barbuda. He presently serves as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Barbuda Affairs in the government of Antigua and Barbuda. He also held ministerial responsibility for agriculture. He has represented his country at all major regional and international organizations. He has also served as Minister of Sports, Culture and Festivals. He is the President of Antigua and Barbuda Olympic Association. He serves with sacrifice, humility, and dedication. He remains a servant of the people with a personal life motto of others. Minister Green is fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, and soon in Mandarin. Tonight, however, we have asked him to speak in English, providing Caribbean governmental perspectives and diplomatic practices.
His Excellency, Dobrin Omad, Chair of the Reparations Support Commission, distinguished panelists, online viewers, brothers and sisters. Today I'm thankful for this opportunity to participate in this forum and to share my thoughts on the absolute need to bridge the gap between Africa and the Caribbean, while continuing to explore new ways of building a common future. The citizens of Antigua and Barbuda are primarily of African heritage, with significant cultural and political ties that run deep based on a common identity. As descendants of Africans who were brought to this region as enslaved people, our culture is heavily influenced in many ways by Africa in language, religion, and food. Having a more informed understanding of Africa's contribution to civilization is critical for us as Africans in the West to help us build our self-awareness, our pride, our confidence as descendants from a rich and powerful continent. Africa's contributions to world civilization throughout history and across various fields such as culture, science, agriculture, technology, and philosophy are significant and real. Ancient Egypt's influence on architecture through the pyramids and the temples, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and governance simply cannot be disputed. Empires like Ghana, Mali, and Songhai in West Africa were essential to the trans-Saharan trade routes connecting Africa to Europe and to Asia. They traded gold, salt, ivory, and other goods, facilitating economic exchange and cultural diffusion. On the East African coast, Swahili city-states like Kilwa and Zanzibar were crucial trading hubs that connected Africa to the Indian Ocean trade network, enhancing or exchanging goods such as spices, textiles, and precious stones with Arabia, Persia, India, and even China. Africa has diverse philosophical traditions. For instance, Ubuntu, an ethical concept from Southern Africa, emphasizing community, humanity, and interconnectedness. The political systems of various African kingdoms, such as the Ashanti, Yoruba, and Zulu, offer unique governance models that emphasize consensus building and community leadership. Africa's contribution to global civilization are diverse and far-reaching, impacting multiple aspects of global development and human history. In almost every sphere, I repeat, every sphere of human development, Africa has made tremendous contributions. It is against this background and influence that has profoundly shaped cultures in the Americas and even here in the Caribbean. From our religious practices such as voodoo and Santeria, candomblé, to music like jazz, reggae, and samba, African cultural heritage continues to enrich global civilization. Therefore, Africa and the Caribbean are linked through a complex web of historical, cultural, economic, and social connections. The most profound link, however, is the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade. Enslaved Africans were forcibly transported to the Caribbean, which has resulted in a strong African cultural presence here in the Caribbean region. This shared history has shaped the cultural and social landscapes of both our regions. The Caribbean and Africa have experienced European colonial rule, which has influenced our political, economic, and social structures. And in many ways, colonialism continues to affect our development trajectories and even our international relations. The hosting of the Africa-Caribbean Summit in September 7th of 2021, under the joint chairmanship of the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, and His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, the then President of Kenya, was a historic gathering designed to strengthen collaboration, unity, and foster increased trade, investment, and people-to-people engagement between the two regions. The Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister and Chairman of CARICOM at the time, called for September 7th annually to be celebrated as Africa CARICOM Day. He also proffered suggestions to include the creation of a Forum of Africa-Caribbean Territories and States, the codifying of the founding charter and a memorandum of operation of the Forum, a multilateral aid services agreement, and an investment protection and avoidance of double taxation agreement between Africa and CARICOM as being significant activities to enhance functional cooperation between the continent and the Caribbean region. Further, Antigua and Barbuda supported the call for the establishment of a CARICOM Africa public-private partnership dedicated to mobilizing and deploying resources into critical, cutting-edge projects, including renewable energy, creative industries, and digital technology. And these were identified as some of the areas from that historic engagement, which, regrettably, are yet to be implemented. Our challenge today, therefore, is to move with alacrity to make these important functional cooperation initiatives a reality. Antigua and Barbuda between 2014 and 2017 will have enhanced diplomatic relations with the African continent, making several diplomatic appointments to the African Union, to the Federal Republic of Ethiopia. And over the years, we have been engaging African countries, both bilaterally and within the multilateral frameworks, such as the UN, the Commonwealth, the AU, and even the Organization of African, Caribbean, Pacific States. Therefore, building a common future between Africa and the Caribbean involves leveraging shared histories, cultures, diplomatic engagements, and economic interests to foster mutual development and cooperation. These can include, but are certainly not limited to, fostering cultural exchange programs to celebrate and preserve the shared heritage, such as our music, our dance, and art, establish academic collaborations and student exchange programs, which would enhance education opportunities and mutual understanding by supporting the efforts of the University of West Indies Global Center with the University of Johannesburg. Develop bilateral and regional trade agreements to increase trade and investment. Focus on key sectors like agriculture, tourism, and technology. Strengthen diplomatic ties through bilateral agreements and cooperation on international platforms. Improve transportation and communication links to facilitate easier movement of people and goods. It is interesting to note that there are partnerships like the LEA 2020 and the Air Peace Agreement, and also flights from Jamaica and Trinidad to South Africa and Nigeria. We could also look at enhancing digital infrastructure to support communication and business operations between both regions. By focusing on these areas, Africa and the Caribbean can build a strong, collaborative relationship beneficial to both regions while promoting shared growth and prosperity. I want to thank the organizers of this very important engagement. The opportunity to dialogue and to share my thoughts on finding innovative ways of bringing the Caribbean and Africa closer together. We have it as part of our remit. What we need is a political will. What we need is a commitment, dedication, stick-to-itiveness, and the ambition to make it happen. Long live Africa. Long live the Caribbean. One live the unity of our people. God bless.
We thank Honorable Chet Green for his perspective and are elated that the Africa-CARICOM collaboration has already yielded fruit in our air transportation field. I now introduce Her Excellency Dr. Barbara Stewart. Her Excellency Dr. Barbara Stewart, born in Jamaica, migrated to Canada over 30 years ago and now resides in Toronto. She is the proud mother of 2 children and currently serves as a humanitarian peace ambassador on the United Nations. She is a registered clinical counselor and a certified master transformational life coach trainer with the Ontario College for Development Training. Dr. Stewart specializes in grief, loss, and women's empowerment coaching. She earned her doctorate in Christian counseling from Canadian Theological Seminary and a PhD in humanitarian mission counseling from the University of California. She also holds a master's degree in leadership and diplomatic relations from City and Guild University, London. Dr. Stewart has served the African Union's 6th Region, Canada, for over 15 years and currently holds the position of Vice Chair, Deputy Secretary General, responsible for governance, intergovernmental affairs, and health. We read Dr. Stewart's written submission to our discussions.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, and fellow advocates, today we stand at a critical juncture in history, united by a shared purpose and a common struggle. The relationship between the Caribbean community, known as CARICOM, and the African Union's 6th region is pivotal, not only for our respective peoples, but also for the global movement towards justice and reparations. The 6th region plays a vital role in intergovernmental affairs, actively engaging civil society, diplomatic groups, and political leaders from both CARICOM and the African continent. It serves as the bridge connecting the diaspora to the motherland, effectively bringing together 2 worlds that share a deep and intertwined history. To strengthen this vital area, we must focus on our plan for the future, which includes 3 essential initiatives. 1. Changing the narrative. We must shift the prevailing belief that we cannot work together. By showcasing successful collaborations and emphasizing our shared goals, we can demonstrate that unity is not only possible, but already happening. 2. Building an economic community. Our aim is to establish a financially sustainable economic community that empowers both regions. This involves creating opportunities for trade, investment, and collaboration that benefits all parties involved. 3. Implementing African Union Agenda 2063. We are committed to realizing the visions outlined in the African Union's Agenda 2063. Our goal is to construct the Africa we desire, a United States of Africa that speaks with one voice and embodies one people. To appreciate the importance of this partnership, we must first explore the foundations of CARICOM and the African Union's 6th region. Established in 1973, CARICOM comprises 15 member states committed to promoting economic integration, cooperation, and cultural exchange. Its roots are deeply entwined with the legacy of colonialism and slavery, as the Caribbean is home to millions of descendants of African ancestors who were forcibly taken from their homeland. On the other hand, the African Union represents the collective interests of 55 African nations striving for unity, peace, and development across the continent. The African Union's 6th region encompasses the African diaspora, including the Caribbean, recognizing the significance of our shared history and cultural ties. This acknowledgement creates a unique opportunity for collaboration and solidarity in our fight for reparations. The struggles of CARICOM nations and African nations are intertwined, rooted in the painful legacy of colonialism, slavery, and exploitation. Our ancestors endured unimaginable suffering, the labor and lives exploited for the enrichment of others. The scars of this history remain evident today, manifesting in social, economic, and political disparities that continue to affect our communities. The fight for reparations is not just a matter of financial compensation. It is about recognizing and rectifying historical wrongs. It is about acknowledging the pain and suffering endured by our ancestors and the enduring impact on their descendants. Reparations represent a pathway to healing, reconciliation, and the opportunity to build a more equitable future. As we reflect on our shared history, it becomes clear that unity of purpose is essential in our fight for reparations. CARICOM has established a Reparations Commission which seeks to address the injustices of slavery and colonialism through dialogue, advocacy, and policy recommendations. This commission is a testament to our commitment to seeking justice and recognition for the sacrifices made by our ancestors. The African Union has also recognized the importance of the diaspora in its broader agenda. The sixth region emphasizes the need for collaboration and solidarity among Africans and people of African descent worldwide. By working together, we can amplify our voices, share our experiences, and build a collective movement for reparations that transcends borders. In our pursuit of reparations, we must build global coalitions that connect our struggles with other movements for justice and equality. The fight for reparations is a part of a broader narrative that includes struggles against racism, systemic oppression, and economic inequality. By aligning our efforts with other marginalized communities, we can create a powerful network dedicated to social justice. This is not a fight for our past. It is a fight for our future. As we engage with allies across the globe, we must emphasize that reparations are not merely a financial transaction, but a fundamental human right. It is about acknowledging the systemic injustices that persist and taking meaningful steps towards equity and justice. To effectively advocate for reparations, we must adopt strategic actions that resonate with our communities and stakeholders. This includes 1. Education and awareness. We must educate our communities about the historical context of reparations, emphasizing the significance of our shared struggle. This awareness can galvanize support and mobilize action. 2. Policy advocacy. Engaging with policymakers and international organizations to advocate for reparations is essential. We must articulate clear demands and present compelling arguments that highlight the moral and ethical imperatives of reparations. 3. Cultural preservation. Our cultural heritage is a vital aspect of our identity. By promoting and preserving our cultural practices, we can strengthen our sense of community and solidarity, reinforcing the urgency of our fight for reparations. 4. Grassroots mobilization. Empowering grassroots movements is crucial in the fight for reparations. By fostering community engagement and activism, we can create a groundswell of support that drives our efforts forward. In conclusion, the relationship between CARICOM and the African Union's sixth region represents a powerful opportunity for unity and collaboration in the fight for reparations. Our shared history, struggles, and aspirations bind us together and compel us to act. As we move forward, let us reaffirm our commitment to justice and reparations, not only for ourselves, but for future generations. Together, we can forge a path toward healing, reconciliation, and a more equitable world. Let us stand united in purpose, drawing strength from our history and culture, and advocating for the recognition and reparations our ancestors rightfully deserve. The time for action is now, and together we can make a difference. Thank you.
We thank Her Excellence Barbara Stewart for sharing information on the sixth region of the African Union and urge that we take heed. I now invite our final speaker to address us. Brother Eric M. Phillips is the facilitator for the Caribbean region for the African Union African Diaspora High Council. He is currently the Vice Chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission and the Chair of the Guyana Reparations Committee. Eric is an executive member of the African Cultural and Development Association, ACDA, and first president of the African Business Roundtable, ABR, in Guyana. In 2022, Eric was installed as Chief Sifisi Zulu under Queen Mzilikazi of South Africa. Recently, Eric was elected as the first vice president of the Global African Diaspora Kingdom of Traditional Leaders. Brother Eric Phillips is therefore well placed to enlighten us on the activities, plans, and responses of both Caribbean and African organizations to the call for unity. You have the floor, sir.
Madam Chairperson Makeda Fleming Challenger, Honorable E.P. Chet Green, Honorable Dr. Barbara Stewart, Honorable Stephen Golding, my dear brother Ambassador Dobrien Omarde, distinguished listeners and organizers. It is an honor and privilege to be part of this event as Antigua and Barbuda has taken the historic step in designating the month of September as Africa Caribbean Month. I do hope other CARICOM states will follow this visionary, bold, and unprecedented step to bring citizens of Africa and the Caribbean closer together. My topic is Global Reparatory Justice, Africa Union CARICOM Collaborative History and Future. This topic is most appropriate for this inaugural program, as reparations is one of the areas that has a long history of collaboration and will bear significant fruit in the future. In June 2013, CARICOM re-injected energy in the global reparations movement when our heads of states passed a unanimous resolution to pursue reparations from European states for indigenous genocide and African slavery. Today, reparations become a global topic of social and economic justice. Indeed, the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent is centered around justice and reparations. The International Decade's theme of recognition, justice, development can be translated to mean reparations. Why? Recognize slavery as a crime against humanity, especially African humanity. Provide reparatory justice for crimes against humanity. And using these payments and resources obtained from reparations to create sustainable development. Recognition, justice, development. What is reparations? For us, reparations is the moral, economic, cultural, religious, spiritual, health, political, diplomatic, educational, psychological, financial, and development issue of our times. Slavery was the world's first nuclear bomb. And now racism has become the world's second nuclear bomb. International law demands that CARICOM, Africa, and Latin American countries should receive reparations. Indeed, a Brattle report, which has been commissioned by Jamaican jurist, former International Criminal Court Justice Patrick Robinson, has shown that 31 countries owe reparations in the sum of $79 to $107 trillion. CARICOM countries and African countries have been economically underdeveloped and politically ignored for quite a while because of a lack of reparations. This has to change, and reparatory justice is one of the keys to this change. Initiatives between CARICOM and African politicians, activists, economists, they've been collaborating on reparations for quite a while. Rastafari have been calling for reparations for some time now. There have been many collaborations between Africa and the Caribbean. There was a conference in Lagos, Nigeria in 1990 with Chief Abiola. There was the first Pan-African Conference on Reparations in 1993 that resulted in Abuja Declaration. There was the first World Reparations and Repatriation Truth Commission Conference in Ghana in 1999. There was a conference in Benin in 1999. In Durban, South Africa, we had a conference in 2001, which resulted in slavery being called a crime against humanity. There have been other conferences, including most recently last year in November in Ghana, where Ambassador Omar, Brother Stephen Hill, and myself were all present. Africa and the Caribbean have had intertwined historical, political, cultural, and aspirational bonds for centuries, and our collaboration has been such. Of course, Caribbean scholars, activists, and musicians were central to the awarding of independence to African and Caribbean countries. Names such as C.L.R. James, George Padmore, Eric Williams, Stokely Carmichael, Walter Rodney, Jomo Kenyatta, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Senghor, Patrice Lumumba, Winnie and Nelson Mandela. These are all names from Africa and the Caribbean that have been collaborating for independence, for social justice, and for reparations. Antigua's Vera Bird, Barbados' Era Barrow, Dominica's Rosie Douglas, Grenada's Morris Bishop, Guyana's Forrest Burnham, Haiti's Toussaint Louverture, Jamaica's Marcus Garvey, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the Garafunas, and of course Uriah Butler of Trinidad, Frank Fanon from Martinique. These have all been intellectuals, activists who've been collaborating so that Africa and Caribbean can change the world, can get social justice. We should never forget African Caribbean heroes such as King Court Kaki, Prince Class of Antigua, Boussa of Barbados, Kofi of Guyana, Nani and Sam Sharp of Jamaica, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Toussaint Louverture, Christophe of Haiti. We've also had great cultural artists involved in the fight for independence and reparation. Our cultural bonds have been intertwined with identity and the global fight against the disease of racism. Bob Marley, Eddie Grant, Peter Tosh, Rastafari, and all of our great Calypsonians, including those from Antigua and Barbuda. Today, African and Caribbean leaders have the diplomatic and political convergence on some critical issues, such as climate change and reparations, so that these leaders will fight together. But where are we really today? We've had apologies from governments, the private sector, religious institutions, cities, universities, and individuals all over Europe. The African Union has joined with CARICOM, Latin America, and the diaspora to fight for reparations. 2025 will be the year of reparations for the African Union, where they'll join with us in the Caribbean to pursue reparations from Europe. We also have the traditional kings and queens. They're supporting us in reparations as a human rights issue. And of course, we have global justice movements that are linked to reparations, such as climate change, Black Lives Matter, the International Decade. What does the future hold? Through the platform of Africa Caribbean Day, the CARICOM Reparations Commission continues to champion the cause for reparatory justice and highlight the critical need for CARICOM and Africa to act in concert in advancing the compelling joint claim for reparatory justice. The CARICOM Reparations Commission therefore welcomes the designation by Africa Union of the theme for 2025 as Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through Reparations. Reparations is a rallying cry and call to action globally to restore the dignity of the victims and our descendants, and to dismantle structural racism, provide redress for systemic injustices and inequality. Equally so, the CARICOM Reparations Commission and our heads of state support the theme of the 9th Pan-African Conference, which will be held in Togo in October, where the theme is memories, restitution, reparations, and reconstruction. Africa and the Caribbean also look forward to the second decade for people of African descent, which will begin in 2026, with reparations as a major initiative. So the past has led us to our present day victories, and the future is bright. Africa Caribbean Month will go a long way in ensuring this bright future. So I congratulate Antigua and Barbuda on this historic designation as of September as Africa Caribbean Month. I thank you.
We thank Brother Eric Phillips of the CARICOM Reparations Commission for his update on pivotal roles of Africa and CARICOM in the expanding global reparatory justice struggles. We also thank you for sharing with us this evening. A recording of this program will be made available, and we ask that you share it as widely as possible throughout your networks. The Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission remains committed to the work of reparations and recognize the importance of African Caribbean unity if the growth and influence and diplomatic power of the global reparations movement. Just want to say good night and thank you again for sharing with us.